So when Satan comes along and he wants to torment us, God has to give him permission. And God does give him permission. And Job was the most righteous man on earth at that moment. And yet, God allows Satan to come and afflict him with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. And not only does Job suffer from that, but Job's family suffers. Job's wife suffers. And nowhere in Scripture does it say, and then God took Job aside and explained to him what was happening. But I'm glad God did that. Because there are times when I've suffered and there has been no rhyme or reason to it. There are times when people I'm around are suffering and there is no explanation. And we know that Job was a contemporary of Abraham, and so we know from the very beginning God wanted us to know that his ways are not our ways, and that we cannot lean on our own understanding. We cannot figure out God. So, one of the other ways I tried to help us think through things, because if we read the book, James 1 chapter, you'll find out, okay, I need 2 volunteers to hold this up for me. Okay, thank you. If you'll do that, and I'll do that. Y'all kind of hold this just a little bit so y'all can get kind of a, just as high as you can in it. Okay, so there we go. And this was interesting too, so I gave it the same things that I mentioned earlier, and I said, I want you to label it temptation, trial, or blessing. So our blessings were getting promoted, losing 25 pounds, child being baptized, having a new home, getting to be a grandmother. The temptations were your husband is unfaithful, and we thought that, that could be a temptation to leave him or kill him, or also have an affair. And then a temptation is to go on a Hawaiian vacation. And then a trial would be cancer, a car wreck, your brother getting married, your parent dying, your child in jail. One of the things I want you to stop and realize, though, just as I said that irritable bowel is a blessing, because I'm going to count it all joy because it keeps me dependent upon God, the good things can also be a trial or a temptation. Because even something like a new home, that can become an idol so easily, where it preoccupies all of our time and our attention. Even something like your child is baptized, and you can say, check that off, spiritual development, leave it to the church, we don't have to worry about getting there so much. Soccer on Sunday is a good thing. And soon, because our child is baptized, we completely neglect our spiritual walk and our children's spiritual walk. So one of the first concepts I want you to get today is, one, God is always in control, always, always, always. And his timing is always right. Even when it makes absolutely no sense. And give up trying to label trials, temptations, and blessings. Because when we try to organize our lives in those little categories, just like we try to do with our stereotypes and our prejudices and things like that, we will get it wrong. So when you read this passage that says, count it all joy when you encounter various trials and temptations, I want you to count everything. matter what is in your box, as a potential for bringing you closer to God's glory and stronger in your Christian faith, or something that will take you further away in those things. One of the things, too, along that line is I want to think about the passage that says, when we're tempted, this is James 1:13, we're tempted. No one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted. God cannot do evil. It's impossible. It is impossible for God to ever experience evil or to tempt us in any way. Then, when we are in those weak moments, of course, we're more apt to give in to those temptations. So Satan comes along. Now, Satan always likes to find us alone and weak. And so we all know that that's exactly when he came and found Jesus. Was he was alone and weak. He'd been fasting. He'd also been praying. Sometimes Satan comes along at those pinnacles when we have been close to God. And he asks Jesus, he says, if you are the Son of God. Now, I don't know that Satan talks to you like he talks to me. But what Satan says to me is, you know, you heard me say that, so you've already done it. Go ahead. Satan always wants me to think that the fact that I even heard his words means I've already failed. So go ahead and do it. And so, you know, it gives me great comfort to know that Jesus talked to Satan and Jesus didn't see him. So, don't give in just because the thought occurred to you, just because you thought his eyes were cute and beautiful, and just because he made your heart flutter just a minute doesn't mean you get to kiss him. It's not sinful to have him touch you. It's completely normal. I want you to also notice this passage that you're very familiar with in Luke.